Coming up on Over a Barrel, crude oil prices have been all over the place so far this month, but where are we getting ready to go with those prices and what that means for you at the pump? Plus a little special note and message. That and a whole lot more coming up right now on Over a Barrel. Well, welcome to the program. I'm one of the two hosts. My name is Matt McLean. The other guy, Patrick DeHaan. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here for Over a Barrel. Patrick, we've got so much stuff to discuss. It's kind of crazy to even stop and think about it. The teas, we've talked about crude oil prices and some other aspects. However, we also have some changes that'll be taking place here at Over a Barrel. Let's go ahead and dive right into that. We've been teasing it now for several weeks, and we've been promising further details. So let's get right on into that very quickly, because I know that we are about to take a short pause. Maybe I'll go on a cruise, maybe not. We'll see.
Maybe I'll take a nap like this guy behind me. I think it's time for a little catch up. Yeah, I mean, to your point, Matt, we have been teasing it for a while. So wanted to share with all our listeners and followers and everyone beyond that we're going to take a couple weeks off. We're going to recharge and reimagine the podcast. The Over a Barrel podcast will kick back up in mid to late May. Again, this is not an ending, but we're reinventing the Over a Barrel podcast. We're going to have new content, bi-weekly episodes. We'll have a pretty robust calendar, Matt, of guests. We're going to refresh things. So it's a chance to catch up. And of course, I know it's a tumultuous time. So we're going to have some fun with this episode today, Matt, including maybe a prediction on where we'll be when the podcast comes back in about a month.
Yeah, typically we only do about one podcast a week unless something kind of comes along the turnpike, so to speak, where we need to do a secondary special edition. But going forward, we're going to be looking at a couple of editions every single week. So again, nobody's going anywhere. I'm staying, Patrick's staying. Everything like that's going to remain consistent. But what we're doing, the whole team behind Over a Barrel, it's going through a reimagination, and I'm looking so forward to it. I'm very excited about some of the changes. This has been ongoing behind the scenes now for several months, and something that we have been talking about for several months with an awful lot of planning and things in place. So we are very excited to be able to relaunch Over a Barrel into a slightly different format, which we think you'll actually love a whole lot. And again, more frequent episodes on top of it, as Patrick mentioned, guests, and we're just very excited about it all.
So don't be surprised if you don't get any notifications for the next couple of weeks. But in the downtime, if you don't already follow us on Twitter, you can do that. I will still keep tweeting information out. So if you're looking for a gas price forecast or what's happening in the markets, I would encourage you to follow Matt and I. I'm a Gas Buddy Guy over on X or Blue Sky. You can also find me on Threads under Gas Buddy Guy as well. Even TikTok, I'm Gas Price Guy over there. And you can find Matt on Twitter at Over a Barrel Matt. So if anything happens during these times, check those social channels. We will be sure to fill you in there. But Matt, let's dive right into this week. Now that we've got the teas out there and everyone knows what to expect, a 4-week prediction, boy, that might be pretty hard to ask.
I would be satisfied with the 24-hour prediction these days. So 4 weeks, I think, is almost, that's just unfair. But we can certainly try to maybe throw some darts and see what sticks. Maybe we say percentages.
Maybe we'll get lucky.
Right? Maybe a 30% chance this happens, a 5% chance that happens. My $1.99 with a good economy happens, right? $1.99 a gallon with a good economy. I'm trying to be positive.
You know, Matt, it's really insightful that you mentioned that low gas price, because it was actually 5 years to this day that this co-host last paid under $1 a gallon. Now, keep in mind, we rewind 5 years ago. That was COVID time. And I actually was in Janesville, Wisconsin, and I probably will put the pickup on social again here in the next couple of days, but 99 cents. And again, that was during the height of COVID. That was when oil prices briefly went negative. I think 5 years ago, a lot of us were thinking, where are we going to be in the next couple of years? When is this thing going to be over? And thankfully, here we are a handful of years later, Matt, and it's kind of back to normal. We've learned a lot. Come a long ways, and gas prices are a little bit more normal as well, much to your chagrin.
Yeah, I mean, and we've had a lot of topsy-turvy stuff in between.
Yes.
I remember paying 79 or 89 cents in that time frame that you're talking about. And basically because the economy was shut down, unfortunately. And then after everything came roaring back a few years ago,
Yeah.
I was sending you pictures of $5-6 a gallon, and really trying to keep my insides from exploding onto my outside there.
I think a lot of us were trying to do that. Like, how do we pay for this? And back in those days, by the way, the height of 2022, I mean, we had really exceptional circumstances. Visa and MasterCard were raising the amount that you had to get pre-authorized, because it used to be like $100 hold, and now it's $150 hold. So
$100 wouldn't even get you a half a tank. Yeah, no, I trust me, I'm still traumatized by the whole thing, and I fully understand. So we don't have to relive that if we don't want to. It's
no,
it's painful.
let's just skip through that.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's fun to reimagine the 99 cent a gallon days, but to your point, falling gas prices, they can be a harbinger of what's to come as well. So remember, it really is rare that you see low gas prices in a strong economy. Actually, back in 2015, that's what we had. 2015, 2016, 2017, we had sub $3 prices, in some instances sub $2 prices, and we did have a very prosperous economy. The biggest difference, though, important to understand why that happened, wasn't a shock on the demand side, but it was a shock on the supply side. OPEC flooded the market starting in late 2014. That paved the way for ultra low prices. And again, the shocks we're talking about, right, that are negative for the economy was more of a demand shock. That demand during COVID plummeted unexpectedly. The supply shock on the other side in 2015 was not necessarily as bad. So this time around, though, it's a little bit of a cautionary sign of where the economy is going. The stock market's been all over the map. We've seen a little recovery. Also worth mentioning, as we've covered the past couple of weeks, OPEC continues to restore oil production. Actually, Matt, that kind of segues into a really interesting development. Just yesterday, OPEC revised lower its forecast that it believes for global oil demand. So the biggest question is, Matt, we've talked about OPEC raising production. Will OPEC, after it has now cut its forecast for demand, will it now also cut production in the months ahead? That's a question mark. And maybe when we revisit this in 4 weeks, when the podcast relaunches, maybe OPEC will have cut production. But for now, a lot of that economic uncertainty has paved the way again for gas prices to fall. And Matt, I don't know about where you are in Kentucky. Still, hopefully it's under $3. But we briefly saw gas prices surging for 3 weeks. Where we are now, well, we're coming back off those highs. We are coming back down. In fact, almost every state, Matt, has seen a weekly decrease.
Yeah, that's I'm not going to complain so much. I was actually just pulling up the current oil price, because last week at this time it had dropped temporarily below $60 a barrel. And now it's sitting currently, as of the time of recording, about $61.22 a barrel. A barrel, by the way, being 42 gallons, not 55. We do say that from time to time because, well, that's just the fact. It's like a troy ounce of gold,
yeah,
not
that's
an actual
right.
ounce of gold, right? It's a very different measurement.
And by the way, as we're talking here, pulling up the week ago prices, Utah, you've seen a bit of a jump. It looks like Hawaii, Idaho, West Virginia. But I mean, look at all the blue here, Matt, or green, or whatever you'd like to call it. Actually, where I am here in Florida, I will take that number one slot. Florida down 15 cents a gallon. Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Delaware. Do you notice a trend here? All 5 of these biggest decreases, by the way, are areas that exhibit that price cycling that we've talked about. Prices go, low, 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 low. They fall the fastest in the country, but then they do tend to cycle back up. So Florida, I love to see that my state that I'm currently in is down 15 cents a gallon. I'm actually sitting on EMAT waiting for my local station to go below the $3 mark, and then I'm going to fill her up. But a lot of these states tend to see bigger decreases faster than other states. So worth calling out.
Definitely, and that I do see that $2.79 a gallon for Kentucky at rank number 21, and I also see some of the other states that I have driven in, Illinois, for example, and Missouri, both of those within the past really 72 hours. I've been in both of those. So and Tennessee. The fun part about all of these things, I do like seeing the prices fall. We are moving into Memorial Day weekend, which sounds insane, but it's only like 6 weeks away, and typically in past podcasts, you and I have talked about, that really the threshold, if you will, of higher gas prices typically tops out between now and somewhere around and then. But we have some extenuating circumstances, really in policy, at administration policy, with the current sitting president, and economic circumstances here. Just trying to figure out how much of more of a surge are we going to see, if we're going to see anything at all. We've got here a tariff, there a tariff, everywhere a tariff, and then we pop back and it's like, well, we're going to put some on pause. Latest polls are indicating Americans are a little bit jitterish about that.
It's probably what happens when the stock market gyrates too violently, right?
Or as President Trump put it, everybody was getting a little yippy. His quote, not mine. And so he put a pause on some of the bigger tariffs.
Cool down, everyone. Cool down. It's just your 401k.
The question mark that I have is, we're not really seeing the standard spring buildup of price points.
Well,
or are we? Help me.
Well, and it's. I'm glad you came to this question. It's a great one. It's actually one that a lot of Americans think that gas prices peak in the summer, right? Conventional wisdom: when people are out, demand is higher, so that's usually when people believe prices peak. But I did crunch the numbers here because I wanted to put a date behind it. So I used the last 10 years gas price behaviors in the winter to the spring. When did the average price peak hit the last 10 years? So basically I converted every one of these averages or the days. How many days into the new year do prices peak? And I did all the math, Matt. When do you think the average date over the last 10 years of the highest price of the year? And it can be any time, but what do you think all of it averaged down to in terms of what day of the year did prices hit their peak?
I'm going to say mid-April.
You are spot on. April
Really?
10th. April 10th is the average day of the last 10 years that prices have peaked. Now, it can be earlier. It can be March. It can be April. It can be May. It can be any month. But generally speaking, the trends that hold during the year are gas prices are lowest in winter. They start going up in the spring. And that's when maximum pressure exists on prices, right around that April 10th mark. Three main things, and I've probably issued these talking points 100 times. Why mid-April? It's the culmination of the height of refinery maintenance. Refinery maintenance starts in March, usually ends in April or May. It's the height of the transition from winter to summer. And it's, you also, on top of it, have rising demand. Spring break travel happens. Americans start to get outside more as temperatures warm up. And April 10th is the average date of peak pressure that all of those are kind of pushing each other higher. Now that we're in mid-April right now, refineries are actively starting to finish maintenance. We're getting closer to summer. That maintenance is wrapping up, and that means that gasoline supply will start increasing as refineries get back into it. And now the transition from winter to summer is basically done, Matt. It's happened across most of the country. So that logistical challenge is behind us, right? The spigots are no longer kinked with the change from winter to summer. The spigots are no longer kinked with refinery maintenance. So to your point, April 10th is usually the date. So typically prices will go down, but you said perfectly, we have extenuating circumstances. So that could lead to some bumps in the road.
Yeah, that's the main question that I've got, especially as a business owner, but not just for me, but a multitude of my own clients and basically businesses at large, small, medium, and large businesses all have basically the same question. What does today hold? Don't worry about tomorrow. Let's see what happens before close of business today so we can pivot one direction or another for tomorrow to try to figure out what to do. It's not the wisest thing long-term that any business should be doing, but sometimes in certain circumstances, it's the only logical choice that a business can make. And so the key for me and really anybody at this point is, how do we go from here economically speaking? The fact that I got mid-April right for the height of gas prices, I'm going to go out and buy a lottery ticket. So if you don't see me a month from now, that might be why. But we'll see what happens. I'm kidding. I'll still show up. But anyway, the point is we need to look at these things and make our way into a mindset of, will prices continue to increase? Are we where we are right now? Will prices go down? Right. You have OPEC increasing production. You have a threat of tariffs. You have, my head sometimes feels like I just here.
So let's back up to that, because that's actually a really interesting point, right? There's a current pause in these tariffs, right? And I think that came out, 10 days ago? So if we do 90 days is 3 months, that's going to put us in midsummer. If these tariffs do move forward, that's going to push, some potential volatility to the middle of the summer, that's when we don't like to see volatility. Although, to my previous point, usually supply of gasoline does build up by midsummer, so at least that won't be too complicating. But yeah, there's still a lot of uncertainty over, will we, see tariffs unpaused come the middle of the summer. I think there was actually some new tariffs implemented the last week or so on pharmaceuticals. There's
In
consideration
progress for not only pharmaceuticals, but also for technology like chips, microchips, and things along those particular
So
lines.
this is a lot of the uncertainty that over the next, while we go dormant here for a couple of weeks and prepare for a relaunch, there could be a lot of things happening. And even in the summer, Matt, there could be a lot of developments that happen. So will this year hold true to that peak right around April 10th? And by the way, we did hit a peak. If I'm going to pull up data here, if this week is going to hold close to average, gas prices are actually down 10 cents a gallon nationally in the last week. So if we don't get any real ripple effects, Matt, this year it looks like April 3rd would have hit our peak. That's when the national average hit 326. We are already down from 326 to 313 a gallon. So this year could be a little early. We'll have to see now. Now we're entering summer. Tariffs are paused. Now the conversation, Matt, as we get close to summer is really going to be, what does hurricane season look like? And as a Floridian, I'm sure that's something, we actually already saw an area of interest, I think, a month ago. So, we are swinging, and this is where we have to put our weather hats on. I did look at some of the long range models that show us, I think it was a La Nina that we were coming out of, or was it an El Nino? But we are basically seeing now ENSO neutral conditions for sea surface temperatures. Why does that matter? People say,
It
why do
matters.
we look at this? Because energy in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico can really be a strong indicator for the likelihood of a major hurricane. And if there's more hurricanes likely, if the ocean temperatures are warmer, that's more of a risk to the price of gasoline for a lot of those huge refineries in Texas and Louisiana. So again, ENSO neutral may be good news in terms of sea surface temperatures are a lot lower than last year.
So the other aspect is the Gulf of Mexico is still quite warm. Actually, it is
Gulf of America.
Gulf. I'll just call it Gulf of
The Gulf. Let's just call it the Gulf.
The Gulf. The temperatures are still quite warm. Thank you for that correction, because I mean 20 some odd years of habits. It is what it is at this point. But
I'm sure you'll correct me too.
I'll work on it. Right. So the temperatures are still quite warm. In fact, Midwest, Upper South, even Mid South and Lower South, Deep South, if you will, saw torrential amounts of rain at the beginning of April as a result of direct energy from the Gulf waters, because they are warmer than normal for this time of the year. And even meteorologists are really keeping a watchful eye for any potential tropical development prior to June 1st directly in the Gulf, because typically...
And Matt, I'm going to pull this map up while you're talking.
Yeah, please do. Typically, the Gulf temperature of water does not support tropical development prior to June 1st, but the waters right now are actually quite warm in nature. And so there is a little bit of a concern that really into May and the beginning of June, there may be some near shore tropical development. Would that be a Category 5? Absolutely not. Would it cause a little bit of a disruption? Tropical depression, tropical storm, minor hurricane? Yeah. Very well could. Severe infrastructure damage? More than likely not. But definitely nobody wants to ride out a Category 1 hurricane on an oil platform in the middle of the ocean. I sure wouldn't, right? So,
and looking at this map, Matt, looking at some of the coastal areas, it does look, I see some green. That's good news off the coast of Texas, a little green. So, normally in the summer, you're going to see as close to red as you get for a lot of the Caribbean around Cuba and Puerto Rico, Jamaica. So, maybe this is a good start. But again, this is why we also look at these types of things when making gas price predictions, is because when you have conditions, I think it's La Nina is a little bit more favorable for hurricane.
And that's kind of what we're moving into. If I remember correctly, it's not El Nino. We're actually moving into a La Nina.
What are we coming out of? Was it El Nino or was it?
If I'm not mistaken, we have either gone in from neutral to We've gone from La Nina to either neutral or converting directly into a La Nina, and I hope I don't have
Oh,
that in reverse.
so the Climate Prediction Center, looking this up to make sure that we're correct, the ENSO alert system status is that they are on their final La Nina advisory. So we're coming out of La
Out of La
Nina.
Nina going into. Got you. Okay. So
Well, there's
I'm
not
upside down.
necessarily going into. I believe right now, ENSO is flipping to neutral. So it's
Got
not
you.
necessarily going to El Nino according to the latest Climate Prediction Center, but this is going into a neutral cycle.
Which is not a bad thing. We'll take neutral, right? I'll take neutral all day long. So yeah,
Absolutely.
my bad. The Ninas, that's always an indicator for sure. So when it comes to all of these things, gas prices off to the side, let me ask you this: are you seeing at any point in time, now that we're roughly 3 months into a new administration, are you seeing what I would consider and call a method behind the madness?
Boy, well, we've actually seen a bit less in the news cycle, Matt, as we've seen some of the pauses. So I think I can see where the administration may be going. I think it's difficult for a lot of economists, also myself, to see exactly how we're going to get there, right? Because I think the policy is rather clear. Trump is pursuing tariffs. But I think what a lot of economists, as well as the stock market, based on how it's reacted, has been surprised with how the administration has handled it. I think even the administration is surprised with how it's handled, right? Because initially they were very focused on tariffs, no pauses. Then that rolled back over the weekend. For those that pay attention to the news cycle, there was an exemption by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. There was an exemption for smartphones, computers, and computer chips. That was a bit of a surprise. That was completely unexpected that these items are currently exempt from tariffs. So, Matt, if I'm getting any read here, we're going into this full force, tariffs, significant tariffs. That was unexpected. Then slight rollback with a pause. Then even more of a rollback with the pause on some China tariffs, including smartphones, computer chips, and computers. So I think it may be undermining the administration. Actually, I read a piece from the New York Post that highlighted, and it may not have been on the New York Post, but that countries, after wanting and lining up to issue and come to new agreements on trade, now that has stagnated in light of the pauses. So I think one thing's been different this administration is with how vigorously they've gone after new policies, and I think how harsh the rhetoric has been about that. Right, very staunchly, we're doing this. We're going to go full force. We're not backing down, and then backing down. So it may undermine the administration in the future, how they go about this. Why this all impacts gas prices. And by the way, the interesting thing here too, Matt, is that Canadian oil is currently paused as well. Tariffs there. I don't know what the latest is, but all of this can have an impact on gas prices because as the global economy may potentially slow down due to the weight of tariffs, oil prices slowed down. And now over the weekend, oil prices have jumped back up again on the hope that a little bit of a cooler heads will prevail mentality could lead to less of a amount of demand destruction, right? If tariffs are implemented broadly, it's going to slow the global economy down and reduce global oil consumption. Now oil prices have rallied slightly over the last week as the administration has backed off. Hopefully that makes sense.
I'm going to throw out just a suggestion or a thought. It occurred to me yesterday or the day before. What this seems to be aiming at is an economic climate that forces the hands of manufacturers, small, medium, large businesses, large corporations, whatever the case may be. We understand that because it's been very brazen and bold of the statements, like we want things made in America, we want more things made in America.
Right.
That seems to be the overall goal. What I'm curious about, and I'm just going to throw this out there, take for example, I believe it was at the beginning of this week, the administration placed a continuation of the pause on tariffs for automobile manufacturing parts. because the automobile manufacturer said, we need a little bit more time to be able to source our parts from American-made manufacturers. And so the key that sort of told me was force the hand. Utilize tariffs to force the hand to reinvent / return to the good old days of when America was manufacturing so much stuff, and force the hand to make some things happen. Case in point, a brand new 25% tariffs on tomatoes grown in Mexico. That is apparently aimed at helping American farmers. Now, understandably, I do think that, to your point, the administration has really rolled out some things. Possibly they bit off more than they could chew without the full extent of knowledge that they probably needed in order to just do across the blanket global tariffs. Because there are some things America just doesn't manufacture or make. Coffee is a prime example. Chocolate, we don't have the, these are just food commodities, right? The climate in our country doesn't support growing coffee beans or chocolate. That has to come further south toward the equator. There are just certain things, no matter how hard we try, we can't grow here, or we can't make here, or we don't have the rare earth minerals in-house to be able to manufacture those things here.
Yeah.
And so as these things have come to light, I suppose what a glimmer or shimmer of hope that I am seeing is that there has been some willingness to say, okay, I see your point. Here's what we're going to do.
Yes.
We will continue the delay on these tariffs until you can get your ducks in a row, and or see what rises to the surface to like, okay, we really can't manufacture that no matter how hard we try here in America for a whole extenuating amount of purposes. Can we grow tomatoes in basically all 50 states? Sure can. But we can't grow coffee beans, and we can't grow chocolate, and we can't, cocoa. We can't do, there are some things we just really can't do. Bananas are another one.
Absolutely. And I think the intent is there. I think they're good ideas. And already we've seen, big investments being made by electronics manufacturers. And now NVIDIA has said that they are going to plan a more robust increase in investment here in the US. So I think this is good. I think what's not good is the fact that basically overnight businesses have had to absolutely scramble, right? This is what could have been a little bit more calculated and given businesses a better heads up that in 1 to 2 years, still early in Trump's administration, that we are going to ratchet up the pressure. And so we suggest you build more U.S. facilities, bring back more U.S. manufacturing, because in 1 to 2 years, you're not going to have the ability, or there's likelihood that you are going to have a substantial increase in your business costs. So, to your point, that's the flip side. And I think how it's being approached is probably, as we've seen from the Trump administration, they've backed off of exactly what they've said. So I think the approach is where they've gone wrong. Hopefully they'll try and figure it out. And that's why oil prices have reacted the way they have. So, as we start to get close to an end here, Matt, as we, we'll be paused for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Let's try to jump into where things could go. And to the point here, this is obviously a developing story, and we could come back in 4 to 6 weeks when the podcast resumes, and we could have a completely different picture. So, I'd love to leave folks with a little bit of, this is what we're going to look for. This is what we can expect. This is maybe a little bit uncertain. And if we jump down that rabbit hole, right now, the national average, mid-April, about $3.13 a gallon. I think there's a good possibility it could go lower. But if we have a lot of uncertainty, if the tariff mantra is still ramping up, then we could go a little bit lower yet. Whereas if the pause continues, if there's more clarity, gas prices may eventually, go up a bit. But in the end, Matt, I think we're going to see gas prices that are far lower this summer and maybe in the spring than what we saw last year. As we are in mid-April right now, the national average is actually 50 cents a gallon lower than last year. That's leaving $200 million in Americans' pockets every single day. So I don't think we're going to see a massive rally in prices between now and the next time we talk. I think there's a bit of uncertainty, but I don't really see under any circumstances gas prices rising beyond the mid $3 mark. In fact, gas prices could slip below the $3 mark. But next time we come at you, hopefully we'll have a little bit better information. But for now, I think that's where we'll be, Matt. A lot of, more states probably will fall back below $3 a gallon in the weeks ahead. And those markets we've outlined, Florida, the Great Lakes, Texas, those are price cycling markets where you're going to see prices kind of bouncing around all over the place.
So I think for me, what matters to me is, will the gas price sink and fall because there's a blanket 10% across the globe that does remain in effect. So as the tariffs kind of get passed on to consumers, the stable tariffs, if you will, the ones that are not bouncing back and forth, they are on again, off again, but the ones that are just consistently across the board, and prices do change for consumables and other aspects when it comes to the American economy. How are Americans going to react to that? Will they just simply buy less because the price has gone up? Because I recognize when you say 10%, well, I can absorb, like if it's a $10, that's an extra dollar. I can absorb that. It's not the end of the world. But I need people to understand, though, that auto manufacturing goods, for example, is the prime example between Mexico, America, and Canada. A 10% tariff is not a 10% tariff. It's kind of like an accounting class in college. A debit isn't always a debit, and a credit isn't always a credit. And by that, I just simply mean the same exact part can go across the border multiple times, and every single time it goes across the border, it's slapped with that 10% tariff. So, but from point A to point B to the vehicle is completed, you could see a 50% markup on that one, or a 60% or a 70% markup, because every time it goes across the border, you got the tariff that has to be applied to it. So it's very dynamic, it's very complex, far more than what we can explain in any aspect here. I mean, it would take all afternoon. I mean, it would take hours. Really, and even then, I would be probably like rubbing my forehead going, where's the migraine pill, right? So, I mean, that's what you want to look at and try to figure out over the next 4 to 6 weeks as some of these tariffs do actually become implemented and begin to trickle down to the store shelf. I'll throw out one more thing. Let's say tomorrow that he undoes all the tariffs. You're still going to see some trickling up in some of those consumables and other aspects because the price point has already been paid on some of the things that are on the shelf. It'll take a little bit of time to start slowly going back down as new products that are shipped across the border get into the storage mix, so to speak. So there's a lot of dynamics there to really kind of pay close attention to and really monitor and guard. My hope is the gas price will fall because it falls just because, right? The economy's doing great and everything's fine. And we have great gas prices. I realize that's a perfect world scenario, and you can tell me I'm delusional, and it's probably not terribly far from the truth, but that's kind of what we want to look at and figure out. So I hope you are spot on with the next several weeks, and that everything, I hope everything looks good from this point.
Yeah, let's hope so. And again, low gas prices. I think, Matt, the thing about this summer is that gas prices should be relatively low. There's not a whole lot right now that oil and OPEC are really pushing prices down. So the next couple of weeks, you could see some gyrations, but I think overall most areas will go down. And again, as we kind of sign off here for the last time in the next couple of weeks, just some review here. We are mid-May going to relaunch Over a Barrel. We're going to take a couple-week pause, really a 4-week pause, to recharge and reimagine things moving forward. We're looking to a fresh start come in May. We're going to have a lot more guests and a lot more structure, so you'll know exactly what we're talking about. For now, though, Matt, I think that pretty much does it. In the interim of the downtime, you can reach Matt and I on social media. I'm Gas Buddy Guy on X, and Matt is Over a Barrel Matt. But Matt, as we close on this kind of first the beta version that we've been going since 2023, I'm looking forward to what the next reimagined version of this podcast looks like with you. So
I am very excited. I really genuinely am very, very much looking forward to what I guess we'll call a relaunch. But the fact of the matter is, I just think it's a lot of enhancements and a lot of wonderful things that we're about to dive into. You can, by the way, also find a public Matt McLean page on Facebook. I have people reach out to me there and ask me to ask Patrick questions. So, which I do. I screen capture and I send them to him, and he responds, and then I respond back. But yeah, there's just so much there. I'm very much looking forward to it, Patrick. I don't know what I'm going to do the next 4 to 6 weeks.
You can rest and recharge, and we can go from Gas Buddy 1.0, or I should say Over a Barrel 1.0 to Over a Barrel 2.0. And when we come back to you, we'll have all sorts of Memorial Day information and news on what you can expect for gas prices. And we will be here to break down exactly what's happening with the White House and tariffs. And hopefully between now and then, it won't be too active. But if it does, again, reach out to us on social. Always appreciate the folks that give us a like and follow and give us a
Absolutely.
review in the podcast and on podcasts and Spotify as well. So I think for now, Matt, we will see you in a couple weeks. I'm Patrick DeHaan. He's Matt, and we'll see you here back in a few weeks.
All right. Have a good one.